Welcome. Today we'll be having a lesson about civic and moral education subject in class 5, and the competence which will be discussed by us today is appreciate the community. Appreciate the community. And the specific competence which we will be discussing today is unacceptable behaviors or bad acts. Unacceptable behaviors or bad acts. So, the first concept which we should deal with is the definition of unacceptable behaviors or bad acts. What are these ones? Once we talk about unacceptable behaviors or bad acts, we mean that are the improper behaviors done to others. Are the improper behaviors done to others. Or you can say that these are the mistreatment of others in the society. Is the mistreatment of others in the society. So in general, bad acts or unacceptable behaviors can be grouped in two groups. The first one is the so-called bad acts in the family, and the second one is bad acts at school. So we will be discussing the bad acts in the family together with bad acts at school as follows. Let us begin with the first group or the first category of bad acts, and that category is bad acts in the family. Bad acts in the family. So when we talk about bad acts in the family, these ones most of the time are done by parents to children. So we will be mentioning them as well as discussing one act after another. So as you can see on the whiteboard here, the first one is child labor. Child labor. What does it mean? When we say about child labor, we mean the situation whereby a child is employed. I am repeating, the situation whereby a child is employed. And once we speak about being employed, we mean a child is working for money. He is being paid. He is working for payment. So such kind of a situation is being referred to as child labor. Why are we saying that it is a bad act in the family? It is a bad act in the family simply because child labor deny the children various rights, including right to education. Including right to education. So another bad act done in the family is early marriage. Early marriage. What does it mean? Once we talk about early marriage, we mean the situation whereby a child is married, meaning that is forced to get a husband or is forced to get a wife. So a situation like that in our society is referred to as early marriage. So we all know that the people who are supposed to get into marriage are the ones who are the adults. And if you are still young, you are not supposed to be married, meaning that you are not supposed to get a wife or to get a husband. So it's one among of the bad acts we have in our families. Then another one is the one called rape. Rape. What does it mean? Once we speak about rape, we talk about the situation whereby someone is forced to have sex with another person. So I find that in our families, most of the time, people, especially the children, can be forced by the adults to have sex with them. So that one is one among of the bad acts which we say that is existing in our families. Another one is involvement in criminal acts. Involvement in criminal acts. Once we speak about involvement in criminal acts, we talk about the situation whereby people commit crimes in our societies. And sometimes we find that the source of crimes which are occurring in our societies are caused by our families. You find that maybe someone or a child at home is not having food. The parents have not given that child maybe food. So what that child decides to do is maybe going street and start stealing so that maybe he can go and buy food. So it's one among of the evil or the bad act which is being done or found in our families. Another one is denial of children rights. Denial of children rights. I think every person is understanding about children rights or the rights of children. Once we talk about the rights of children, we talk of the things which a child should be given or should get, especially from the parents or other community members. But you find that due to various reasons, the parents fail or the community members fail to give the rights to the children because of a number of factors, as I have already said. So these ones and others which we have not identified or written on this whiteboard are the so known as bad acts which are taking place in our families. Now, having spoken about these ones, let's now shift to the second group of the bad acts which are occurring in our society. So we have the second group, as I told you earlier, that is known as bad acts at school. Bad acts at school. First of all, every person is aware about what a school is. You learned in the previous class that a school is a place where pupils go to learn and get education. So sometimes during the time when they are there, they are encountering various bad acts which should not be done to them. Now, let us see examples of bad acts which they can be subjected to them when these pupils are at school. Number one, we have corporal punishment. Corporal punishment. What does it mean? Talking about the corporal punishment, we talk of the punishment which results to physical pain to a person who is receiving that punishment. So sometimes pupils are getting corporal punishment from various teachers teaching them at school. And not only teachers, you find that we have also other workers at school. So these workers, you find that sometimes they end up pinching pupils. Not only so, caning them, especially when they misbehave or they do something wrong. So when they are punished and may be injured or getting a physical pain, we call it corporal punishment. We have another one known as abusive language. Abusive language. We all know the characteristics of abusive language. Normally, abusive language is a language which is full of insults. Not only so, it's sometimes using bad words which are not supposed to be told to a person or to be said to a person. So such kind of language is being referred to as abusive language. So sometimes when pupils at school have done something wrong, you find that teachers, all other workers who are found there at a given school end up insulting them. We know various insults which are always directed to these pupils. But in general, when the teachers are doing so, we call it abusive language. And it is not supposed to be done at school simply because it is a bad act. Then, lastly, according to what we have identified here, we have segregation. Segregation is also there. Segregation is one among the bad acts done at school. Once we talk about segregation, is a situation of trying to make people not to be together. You try to separate them. So you find that sometimes, especially those pupils who are not performing well academically, they end up being separated from others. You find that sometimes teachers are also segregating them. They are separating them from others, especially the ones who are performing well. So they tend to create groups of them. You find that this is a group of pupils who are not performing well, so learners, while others are the ones who are performing well. So if something like that one occurs in the school or in a class, we call it segregation, and it should not be entertained in schools. Then, having spoken about these two groups of bad acts, now let us shift to the reasons for bad acts in the society. What are the reasons which make these bad acts to be present in our community? Number one, as you can see here on the whiteboard, I have written poverty. Number two, I have written drug abuse. Number three, I have written lack of education. So we have many of them, but these ones are just few examples of the reasons to why these bad acts are present in our societies. So maybe let me talk about poverty. Talking about poverty, we mean the situation whereby someone is unable to get the basic needs. I think every person is aware about the basic needs. We talk about food, shelter, and clothes. So these ones are the basic needs which a person should get. But when a person is unable to get them, that situation is being referred to as poverty. So due to poverty, many people tend to engage themselves in the so-called criminal acts so that they can end up getting maybe money so that they can buy the basic needs which they are not getting. Now the second reason which I have identified on the whiteboard here is the so-called drug abuse. Drug abuse. Talking about the drug abuse, we talk about the habitual taking of illegal drugs. The habitual taking of illegal drugs. We talk about cocaine and etc. We have many of them in our societies. So when you take drug, especially the ones which are not accepted, you will misbehave because we expect you to start insulting people or beating others or fighting with others. So when you fight with others, we say that you have committed a crime. But if you want to avoid things like those ones, like fighting with others, insulting others, you have also to avoid drug abuse or to avoid being a drug abuser. Lastly, we have lack of education. Lack of education. Lack of education is another reason which can contribute to the existence of bad acts in the society. Because sometimes we find that people can be engaging themselves in various bad acts without knowing the effects of those bad acts. But if education will be provided to them, they will be aware about the impacts, especially the negative impacts of these bad acts. So if they become educated, we are sure 100% that they will avoid these bad acts. Then we have another concept in our today's lesson, and it is condemning bad acts in the society. Condemning bad acts in the society. I would try to ask you a very simple question, which you can answer it in yourself, that are these acts supposed to be existing in our society? Are these acts supposed to be done or existing in our society? I hope every person have said no. And if you have said no, then you have to condemn them. What does it mean when we speak about condemning something? We talk about speaking against these acts which are occurring in our society. So we have to speak against them. We should not entertain them. We should not be happy simply because they are bringing a lot of or a number of effects in our society. So let us see the ways through which a person can use in order to condemn these bad acts which are occurring in our society. Number one, we have reporting child labor. We have spoken about child labor here, whereby the pupils are being employed. Children are also being employed so that they can earn money. This one is not supposed to be existing in our societies. So what are we supposed to do when we see children being employed? We should report this situation in various places. Maybe you can report it to the police station so that various measures can be taken against the person who has involved himself in child labor. Then number two, we have punishment to people who employ children. Punishment to people who employ children. Also, the laws or lawmakers should formulate various laws which will be used against these people who tend to involve themselves in the employment of children. Why am I saying so? I am saying so simply because most of the time when these children are being employed, they tend to avoid going to school. You find that they are not going to school simply because they have to work where they have been employed so that they can earn money. And when they start earning money, they see education not to be important. So you find that they are not going to school. So these ones and other things which we have discussed here are the things which I wanted us to learn today. Thank you.